Servus, Matthias Eichler here, and in this episode of Single Track, I sit down with Matt Urbanski, ultra runner, world traveler, coach, and co-founder of Team Run Run, the popular online marketplace for running coaches. Will Matt convince me to finally consider getting a running coach, or will he just revive my dream to run UTMB one year? Well, we will find out right after I tell you once more about the upcoming virtual Vert Winter Challenge. Yes, we're doing a virtual race again. It's happening in early March. It's the Vert Challenge with the crazy formula. Not just miles and vert count, but the reps, the number of times you climbed that hill too. Visit rockcandyrunning.com to learn all about it. Sign up and come chase Vert with me. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Matt. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show on Single Track. We indirectly met. Well, we've never actually met in person, but I mean, it's COVID, so nobody meets in person. And you were calling in from Colorado, but I'm gathering from my online sleuthing that you have connections to Seattle. Am I getting this right? And what's the connection?
You definitely have it correct. We have lived all over the country, but we had kind of home base out of Seattle from roughly 2013 until 2018.
Okay.
And so we were in and out of Seattle. We've lived there probably a total of 3 or 4 years. We lived in the Portland area before that. So we've been Northwest for a good decade. But now, yeah, we ended up in Colorado when my second son was born, just to try out somewhere new, and so we've been enjoying Boulder off and on for the last few years.
I'm fascinated by this, especially with kids and stuff. This whole moving thing, like I feel weirdly anchored down. Did you move while the kids were still young, where it was easy, or are you just like, the kids get over it, or it's actually good for the kids?
All of those things. My oldest son, who is 6, his name is Pavo, he was born in Seattle. And when he was 4 months old, we left and began a kind of a nomad lifestyle for the next few years. So before he was 3, he had spent time on 5 continents and 18 countries.
Oh,
so we were used to moving around. Yeah. And then when my wife, Julie, was pregnant with our second one, we were in Europe, and we needed to pick somewhere in the States to have him because we looked at doing it in Europe, and it was complicated with healthcare stuff.
Yeah.
So we just decided to try Boulder. We had connections here. My brother lives close by. I have a lot of running friends here. So it was an easy place to just go plug in, have a kid. We stayed for 6 months after Brecken was born, and then we headed back out again. And we just got back here a few months ago just to be back to see family and friends after being gone for a few years or a couple years.
So I did not anticipate me wanting to know more about this, but if you say you live in, because sometimes people tell their story and it's like, okay, that's fairly normal, we can move on. But if you say nomad lifestyle, you are fairly serious about it. Give me an overview what that looks like. I mean, if you're traveling internationally, you're not doing van lifing. So where do you stay?
Yeah, so we, for the most part, when we've left, we've gotten rid of all of our stuff. We don't have a lease. We don't have a house. And we tend to live in Airbnbs. Sometimes that's a really good deal, depending upon the exchange rate. Sometimes it's expensive, but I think it all averages out over the course of the places that we go. And we rent cars, we live in Airbnbs, and we tend to go where a lot of the races are. My kids are young enough that they don't really have much of a say in where we go.
Okay.
And so it's like, well, I did UTMB in 2016, so we went and spent 3 months in Chamonix. And then we ended up this last trip in Australia because I ran the Australia Alpine 100 Challenge. And then we went to New Zealand because I was running Tarawera. And so we just kind of bounce around to where the races are. And, sometimes we go to some non-running destinations. But, yeah, we tend to bounce around. And we're just back here. We're doing a 1-year lease in Boulder, but I'm going to bet we get back out in the world again after our year here, just because we like to be out in the world.
I mean, I mean, that's sort of the dream for many people. And I mean, it feels very dreamy. But I mean, I traveled before I got married, and I remember after a year of traveling, I had this weird dream of owning a magazine subscription. That was before the internet really like took off. But I had this feeling like I needed to settle down. Like just a suitcase just didn't feel enough anymore. Like I wanted to have a magazine subscription that came to my house once a month or whatever and with my name on it. I felt like that's something that I needed. So for you to live so minimalistic, to talk to me a little bit more about it. What are the exciting things?
So it's not all dreamy. It's a lot of hard work at times. The biggest drawback of the lifestyle is not being around constant friends. You know, like we miss our friends. One of the main reasons we came back in July was just because we missed our friends. And we wanted our 6-year-old to have a chance to like build some lasting friendships. He's really good at walking up to kids at a playground and saying, "Hey, you want to play?" Mm-hmm. But we thought it'd be good for him to have some like learn to build friendships. So that's the biggest drawback. And then it is nice to have stuff. Like like we furnished an apartment here in Boulder, and it's nice. It's nice to have our stuff. Like we got an espresso machine. We love good coffee. So it was like, yes, let's get the stuff we really want.
Yeah.
But that wears off after a few months, and we're like, okay, we kind of want to get back out in the world again. So I don't know. There are trade-offs to every kind of lifestyle. This one suits us well. We like it. We have some places we go back to now. Like we'll probably go back to Australia and back to New Zealand. We go back to Chamonix, but we have friends in all these places now. And you probably know this as a runner. You can make runner friends everywhere in the world. And so like everywhere we've gone, we've made runner friends. And so it's like, well, I can't wait to go back to Melbourne, Australia to go run with my mates down there, you know, or like go back to Nelson, New Zealand and run with my friends there. And, so yeah, no, it's a cool lifestyle, but it's evolved as we've grown and had our kids too. So I don't know. It's not for everyone, but we like it.
No, it sounds amazing. When I travel, I love going into grocery stores, right? I mean, I think that's one of the exciting things, especially because now with Airbnbs and stuff, you're able, I mean, if you would have to live out of hotel rooms, that would be obnoxious and would get old very quick. But if you have a full house and you have a kitchen, then you can cook and then you can create home by bringing the dishes with you and that you always cook. If people get homesick, if family gets homesick or so, right? You can say, okay, tonight we're cooking this, and you go to a grocery store and you find unique things and special things that go with that. And so this exploration sounds amazing.
And one of the ways that our travel has evolved is when Pava was a newborn and we were traveling, we often would like move once a week or every other week. And when we went back out more recently, after our second son was born, we went for longer periods of time. Like we went to Melbourne, Australia, and we went there for 3 months straight. We got one Airbnb for 3 months, and like we had a home base in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. And then when we went to New Zealand, it was like, well, we were 2 months in Auckland, and then it was like 3 months in Queenstown. We spent 3 months in Nelson. Like we spent longer times. We made more friends. We like got to know the area really well. Like we got library cards, you know.
How does it work with visas? Are you able to stay that long in the country? We said because you don't need a job there, it's okay?
No, so we play the visa game frequently. When we go to Europe, we'll go to Europe. I'm going to do TDS in August, and my wife is racing in Nice in September. So we know, for example, in Europe, we get 90 days in the Schengen zone out of every 180. So we're going to go for 90 days, and then we're going to get out. Mm-hmm. Likewise, like in Australia, we get 3 months at a time. So we did 89 days, and then we headed over to New Zealand. But then COVID happened, and like the visa rules changed. We actually stayed in New Zealand for 15 months, which was fantastic. But that's kind of that's an exception to the rule. That was because of COVID.
So, I mean, I could talk, this is supposed to be a podcast about trail running, but I could talk about this stuff for a really long time. Just because this cultural immersion. I mean, Rick Steves calls it travel as political act, and the ability to immerse yourself in another culture, not just window shopping, 5 days through Europe and then going back home, but actually getting to know the locals, the traditions, the culture, the foods and stuff. I mean, it opens your mind so much that it's totally worth it. And there was a time, I mean, perhaps it's because I have a family now and so everything gets really expensive. But there was a time when I felt like travel seemed really easy. The prices of airplane tickets were just dropping, but it was still special. And now, sometimes or most of the time with my kids in high school, it's super tricky to try to find cheap airplane tickets because you can only fly during summer holidays and stuff. So I feel like it's become such a burden that sort of the golden age of travel is over in my perspective. But you're still doing it.
Yeah, it's doable. We play the mileage, the credit card miles. We get a lot of free flights. We can fly at random times when things are cheaper. And then it should be included. Like we have an online business. Like we have an online running coaching business, so we can do that from anywhere in the world. And we have people in the States that help us run our business. So like that's another, we don't have to like take off time from work. We work everywhere we go, which
absolutely
makes it doable.
Absolutely. We hadn't really introduced that part yet because I got so excited. But yes, you're running an online business. No, I mean, you're like literally sort of like your Instagram account should be like 550,000 followers because you're living like that influencer dream life, because I feel like every 2 weeks I get like an invite from some kind of spam bot on Instagram that says, live anywhere in the world and earn cash while you travel. But you're actually doing it.
We don't have time to do the Instagram account though, because we're doing it.
I know. Exactly. I mean, it's not just about getting likes and then free hotel stay in some weird ritzy resort where you have to take a photo or something like that. But
no, that does sound nice. I won't lie. That would be nice to have that.
Well, I mean, like Matt travels or so. Perhaps you have to start like a little side project where you take cute pictures of I don't know, wildlife or something on your travels. But you actually have a real. No, let's not talk about your business yet. I want to talk about your running. So you run all over the world, and I've said before we got on this call, I'm mostly interested in your running down under because I've not had anybody on the show. Perhaps they've traveled and I've ignored it and didn't talk about it, but I've not had anybody on the show that has traveled down in Australia or raced down in Australia and New Zealand. And there's obviously the logistical challenge that just flying down there doesn't just make it expensive, but you really have to get down there long enough in advance that you can acclimate yourself to the environment. You're doing it right because you're staying down there for a long time. But tell us a little bit about the trail racing scene down under. How is it? How is it different? What makes it exciting?
Good questions. And I mean, there's a massive trail running community in Australia and in New Zealand. They've got great trails. They've got great races. We knew we were going to go to Melbourne for 3 months. And so like I had found some running groups down there, and I had some friends right away and like had people to run with right away, which was fantastic. And they sort of like told me what races to like. The big one I was going to do was the Australian Alpine 100 Challenge. It's in the Australian Alps, a few hours outside of Melbourne, and it's a hard rock qualifier. So I was like, okay, cool. I play the hard rock lottery game, and I needed one for the year, so I went and did that one. But before that, some of the people I'd met in Australia like told me about more of the local races. So I did a 50K training run, and I did some other ones after the race. But no, it's good. I mean, one of the biggest differences, and I could relate it to, well, a big difference is the snakes. And I relate it to how people and someone coming from Europe might be, or from other parts of the world might be like, wait, you have mountain lions and bears out here, and we sort of just we just assume that they're going to leave us alone, right? We still run our races even though they're out there.
Yeah.
And the Aussies are the same way with snakes, but like part of the required gear kit was a snake bite compression kit, because on the race I was doing, there were 5 different types of venomous snakes that lived on the course.
Yeah.
And I tried to not freak out about it, but I mean, like, there's all this like brush, the eucalyptus trees have this like long strand bark type stuff. And the way it is, especially at night with a headlamp, when you're running an overnight race, it's like your mind's just playing. Like every stick and piece of bark looks like a big snake. So at least in that race, that was our first stint in Australia. It was like late 2019, early 2020, pre-COVID. And then I went back there in 2021 and raced Ultra Trail Australia 100K, which that I think is like the biggest trail racing weekend behind UTMB in terms of number of participants.
Yeah.
It's a huge race. And that one's in the mountains outside of Sydney in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains in the Blue Mountain National Park. And awesome race, great vibe. I think it's part of the like UTMB. It's been part of the Ultra Trail World Tour, and it's a cool race. I was just like, I was fortunate to get to run it. They like, I don't know, they helped me get in. It was a good deal, and I got to run, and it was awesome. And the most unique thing about that race, stairs. Like, I don't know if you know about that race, but there are literally just like, so you picture almost like the higher elevation, and then just like a drop off, like cliff. And you have to get down. And so you just keep bombing down these stairs, like built into the side of the cliffs or like carved in and different size stairs. And the race literally finishes with like a kilometer of stairs and then a 200-meter sprint to the finish. So you spend the last 15 minutes going upstairs when you're like dead at the end of 100K. Every muscle in my legs were cramping up. It was, but it was a great race. The Aussies have a lot of fun, and we're already excited to go back when we can.
So tell me about the compression kit, right? Because you were saying that a European freaks out about the idea that we take bears and mountain lions for granted, right? And over here we have bear spray, and we know what bear spray looks like if we travel in certain places. What does a snake bite compression kit look like? And can you just pick it up at the equivalent of the local REI?
Yeah, they sell them they even had them at the like the packet pickup for us foreigners who didn't know where to buy them.
Yeah.
And to be frank, I don't know if they actually do anything. I've got a friend who I run with who's a doctor, and he's like, if you get bit by a snake, you just need to get out and get the antivenom. It's not going to like do much to wrap something tight around your leg, but that's how they have it there, and it's a required piece of gear. One of the other big differences, and you would know this racing in Europe too, but like, they have required gear kits that are significant compared to anything in most U.S. races. I had to get used to carrying around 7 pounds of stuff on my back. On any race I did, even a 50K, I had to carry winter gear, a bivy sack, like things that if I broke my ankle or I got lost, like I could survive for a day or two on my own. So that was just the norm in any trail race in Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm going to do hard rock this year, and I don't know if I have to carry anything. I mean, I will carry some stuff, but like, it's not required like it would be in a race in Europe or Australia or New Zealand. At
the check-in at Monte Rosa, they had like a whole tent set up, and they had each runner that was let in, obviously with COVID, it was like all like spaced out and stuff like that. But they had like pieces of paper on the ground for each runner, and it had like, here are your 2 headlamps, and here's your rain gear, and you had to like lay your stuff next to the pieces of paper. And then somebody came and with a checklist, and they essentially checked your entire gear off. So you had to empty your entire pack. And you had to like lay it all out on the grass and in front of you, and people went through and checked it like that.
Yeah, that's the norm in Australia and New Zealand too, for any race you do on the trails.
Anything crazy different at aid stations from food point of view? I mean, because that's in Europe also so exciting, right? You come to an aid station in Europe
Yeah,
and you're like,
cheese and
it's
salami.
like, chocolate? I'll take it, but okay.
I actually don't use the aid stations much anywhere. I tend to bring all my own fueling. So I there was nothing that was noticeably different that I can think of from a fueling perspective. Unlike like in UTMB, you go through Courmayeur and they literally have a pasta buffet. Like that, I had never seen anything like that. But when I think about racing in Australia and New Zealand now, it's fairly standard fare.
So
They call them lollies, a lot of candy.
so if you have this required gear and you take your own fueling, what pack do you take on especially long races?
I mean, I can fit everything still into a Solomon Advanced Skin, the 8-liter pack.
Okay.
I've got over the years, I've acquired a lot of like pretty good gear that packs down small and is light, and so I'm always trying to pack it well, but I can fit it all in an 8-liter usually.
Okay, that's good. I struggled at Monte Rosa. I had all the winter gear, and I was like, I'm trying to figure out, and it's so the pack is stacked so tightly that you put it on and it like barely moves anymore because it's packed down so intense. All right, so you run all over the world. TDS is coming up. What race? I mean, you doing hard rock, trying to, or did you get in this year?
I got in. I am doing hard rock this year.
Right, you got in. That's what I thought I read, and that's something. Is it the first time you're doing hard rock?
Yeah, I've been trying to get in since 2014 or 2015. So
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm in, and yeah, my racing schedule this year, I'm doing the Boston Marathon in April, so I'm doing more like faster stuff in the spring, and then getting ready for hard rock and TDS. And then hopefully I'll go back to the track and go back to Arizona in December of next year or this year and do Desert Solstice 24-hour, right?
That's
I have
like
unfinished business there. I want to
okay. That is like all over the map. That's interesting. So you do Boston and then hard rock. That's quite a switch in training and pace.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it stacks up well. Like I spend the winter doing faster stuff, road stuff, getting myself just in good overall running fitness. And then when I get back from the East Coast at the end of April, I'll start getting on the trails. I'll start getting vert, start running with my pack and stuff. But I'm not literally doing any trail stuff with vert right now. Like that'll all happen in May and June and the first part of July. But that's plenty of time because I'll go in really fit and ready to get after it. And I'll be sick of fast, hard road running by then. So I'll be stoked to get on the trails and start climbing again.
That sounds good. Now, of course, this all sounds like you have a very detailed coaching plan and have this all structured. And we haven't really talked about in detail about your business because that's where all of this comes together. You actually run an online coaching platform. Is that the correct term? Coaching as a service?
That's a fair platform, a marketplace. We're connecting runners and coaches.
Yeah. You're connecting runners and coaches. So tell us a little bit about when did you start this? And the thing that I'm most curious about it, did you come from this point? Well, let me just ask you this first. When did you start it? How long have you been doing this?
So I started online coaching in 2014 out of Seattle just as a side hustle while I was going to nursing school as a second career. I used to work in finance and my wife did also. And I was just like, well, what do I know well that maybe I could make a living at? I know running really well. And this was before like there were a lot of online running coaches. And it worked by the time I finished nursing school. Like I had a decent roster and I never actually worked as a nurse. I just kept coaching. So that was like the start. It's not a glamorous story or anything. It was just something that I was, like I tried while I was doing this other thing, but then it became bigger and bigger. And it was probably in 2018 that I had friends who were interested in kind of getting involved in it too. And it's like, well, I've already got all the business stuff set up. I already know how to get all this stuff going. I've got a website. And we just started like asking friends, and suddenly like we had 10 people that were all like coaching together. And then it's just evolved to where now we have lots of people contacting us that coach on our marketplace and are part of our team. And I mean, I don't know, they're not friends anymore. I mean, hopefully they become friends, but like, I don't know them, right? They're
right.
They know of us and want to coach with us.
It has grown beyond your like word of mouth, immediate, like circle of people. So give us a little bit of an overview of what is the secret sauce that you deliver in terms of you are not responsible for the coaches and the content, right? So you find people who are independent coaches and they're responsible for finding their own clients. So they're using your platform, and what is the platform? What do you like in between do?
So our coaches, they coach with their own philosophy. They set their own price, and we try and do everything else so that all they have to do is focus on coaching. Mm-hmm. We all the business stuff, like, whether it's marketing them or paying for liability insurance or, there are a lot of things that go into, the website. But I think the real value and what we try and when we have coaches come on board that we want them to sort of buy into is that the real value is in the relationship between the runner and the coach. I think someday, like your watch, if you've got good data, like it's going to be able to tell you what to do and probably make a good plan for you. But like, it can't replace having sort of like an expert there on the journey with you as you try and become a better runner or like achieve some sort of running related goal. Like I coach people who want to qualify for Boston or who want to like do certain 100 milers. And it's like, well, you want to start talking about UTMB? Cool. Like, let's talk about UTMB. I've been in Chamonix for 5 months of my life. I love it there. I love the racing there. You want to talk about Western States or Leadville? We build this relationship on these goals that they have, and I don't know, we get to be friends, and like, it's a really cool experience. I have a lot of runners I've coached for since I started in 2014, like 5, 6, 7. I've got one guy, we're in our 8th year together. Mm-hmm. And it evolved from him doing a marathon to now he does 200. He's doing the Triple Crown of the 200 milers this year.
Wow. Amazing.
So we just sort of grow together, and that's like the real value. Like, we don't sell training plans. It's all about individual one-on-one relationship, basically connecting an expert with someone who, like, the runner picks their coach too. Like, they look through the directory and see like which one do they think they're going to work best with. Mm-hmm. And I think the magic is just in that relationship that develops around running.
It's interesting, and I think here we are sort of reaching this point where I'm going to throw my hands up in the air and say, I get it from a theoretical point of view, and I don't know if it's me being a frugal German who doesn't want to see the money spent as value that comes out of it, but I've always been a big proponent or opponent of needing a coach. I've seen the theoretical value. Everything that you say makes sense. I wouldn't say, I don't get it, but I don't, it feels like a lot. But I'm coming around to it partially because I had two big DNFs last year, which if they wouldn't have been DNFs, certainly would make me feel a lot better about my running in general. And, I don't feel bad about my running, but I'm asking myself, okay, so if things are not going automatically, what do I need to do to fix it? And if I stare at the wall and nobody tells me back what I should fix, then perhaps a coach is the answer, right? But there is also this other thing after now. I'm in my 10th year of running, I think. And I think there is a certain thing that when you have a group of friends that you run with, they can only help you so far. They are on their own journey and they go through injury and then they might disappear from your running group for a while. And so those people that were sort of your accountability friends, not partners necessarily, but the ones that you regularly talk through with, they sort of like, they fall off and disappear. And a coach is somebody who, well, you pay to be there for you, right? So there is some consistency there. So I get it. But I'm coming from a place where I've never considered it, where I've never wanted to get it, where I thought, well, I mean, looking at my Strava data, I can be smart by myself.
So I'll give you three sort of lines of thinking on it. One is there's I think a high likelihood that your training is optimized. If you have someone who is an expert at this, looking at everything from a more objective point of view, so you likely get some better training, or even just like you stack your training in a more efficient way, or in a way that's going to help you improve more, or maybe just something different. Like if you do the same thing over and over again for 10 years, your progression may slow. Whereas if you try some different types of training, you might actually get a big boost from that, like a new training stimulus. So I think there's the possibility that you optimize your training. There's definitely a big accountability piece where, I don't know, maybe you are just on it and you do every training run that you think you should do. But a lot of people benefit from knowing that coach is actually paying attention to them and is watching to see how they do and how it goes, and that they actually do it. So that there's that component, that you have another set of eyes on it. And then I would also say, like, when it comes to, well, this is, I don't even know what the word is for it, but I was very much of your mindset. I coached for years, and I had never had a coach apart from my like high school and college coaches, which is very different than a personal online running coach. And I actually had a coach for a year from 2018 through 2019. And I was excited about the training. It was going to change up, the things I said. I was going to be accountable to him, and it was going to optimize my time that I was spending training. The thing I loved the most was that someone was actually just paying attention to my running. Like, running is my thing. I've been doing it my whole life. And, my wife's a runner, and she asked me, how was your run? That was good. But she's not looking at the Strava data and, like, giving me feedback and, like, being like, wow, you really nailed that workout. And I was like, yeah, I know, but I don't get to tell anyone, But my coach actually noticed. And it was just like, it was almost like I wanted to perform better because I wanted to, like, show it. I knew someone was watching, and there was, like, for me personally, there was a lot of value in that. And then a sort of a related point I'll say is, spending the money on it. I think when running coaching started, it got fairly expensive. There weren't many people doing it. I think that the prices are coming down, and I think that for example, we have coaches who are just trying to build up credibility in the marketplace because there are so many online coaches now that they're charging like $50 a month. And this is for like one-on-one custom training. They're undervalued at that price, I think, but like they just want in at this point because like it's a saturated market. Whereas like you could hire some coaches and pay $300 or $400 a month. And I don't think you need to do that anymore. Like for $100 a month, you could get a great coach, and they give you a ton for that, I think. So there are lots of good reasons. That was I've talked enough, but I don't know if I've sold you, but I think there's a lot of value in it, and it doesn't have to be that expensive.
Well, I am going to say to the second point, I think it is interesting because this accountability partner, the person who pays attention to your workout. I think that's interesting because Strava is sort of focused on a few basic numbers. And if you want attention, I mean, if you're looking at the basic psychology of the like chasing, the kudos chasing or so, right? And then you probably do the wrong training because you will always go for a high mileage number or a fast speed or something that your circle of friends pay attention to and will comment on. And that is not necessarily what a good training plan should look like, right? Because you always will focus on certain numbers. Wherein if you have a coach, then he will actually focus on on what the workout was supposed to be at that particular day, which makes more sense. So yes, and the money part. I mean, you're making a good point in that sense that I feel like, or let me bring it to that point. I think the thing that I find interesting and I'd be willing to pay for, especially now after having traveled to Europe and DNF'd over there, is I think the experience, not just from a coaching, but having done particular races. Like if my goal is to run UTMB, I probably would soak up and pay for everything that I can to get insight into what it means to run UTMB, because I can't fuck that up, right? I mean, you get one chance, most likely, most average runners. It's so hard to get into. Hard rock's the same way, right? I mean, you've been trying hard rock for so long, you need to know absolutely everything about that course and every bit of information. And you would have a coach who's done it before, then that's almost worth any price.
Yeah, I mean, and even if your coach hasn't done that particular race, like there are plenty of races I haven't done that I've coached people on, but it's like someone like me who's been in the sport for a long time, like, okay, well, I know I can even just go to our roster of coaches and be like I'm coaching a guy who's doing Angeles Crest this year, and I haven't done Angeles Crest, but you know what? Ashley Nordell, who's one of our badass coaches, she set the course record on that one. So I'm going to ask Ashley, and I'm going to connect Ashley with my runner, and she'll help. Mm-hmm. And part of the cool thing about our team is like we have this huge pool of amazing resources. I mean, like we do this thing like the Talk with the Experts. It's a monthly Zoom call that we make available to our runners and our coaches where, like, for example, CJ Albertson did one, or Dakota Lindworm did one on racing big city marathons. And like CJ is a 2:11 marathoner, and Dakota was the third American woman at Boston this year. And like, they're available to tell our runners, just like answer all their questions about what it's like to race these big city marathons and how do you strategize for them, and how do you race your best. And so not only could you have your coach, but like in our situation, you can benefit from our group of coaches, which is a really cool thing.
So you're then buying into, and I mean philosophically buying into the larger community too, which is a huge benefit. Absolutely. So now quickly circling. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, so like that's the thing that we do, right? So you started the conversation with like our nomad lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
So like just to imagine, like we were in New Zealand for 15 months, and we sort of like set up our shop in Queenstown for a while, and I was running the trails there, prepping for a 100-miler down there, and Julie does a lot. My wife Julie does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, customer service, the web stuff. I'm coaching runners and doing things, like I do a lot of our like outreach and collaboration and partnership stuff. But either way, between the two of us, we're making this thing work and connecting runners and coaches. And meanwhile, I get to continue to race at the same time, which is fantastic.
I don't know.
So that's like a picture of my life and how it goes.
It's brilliant, though. I mean, to your very, very early point, I think you'll probably come to a point where, well, the kids, I don't know if they want to settle down. If they're used to it, perhaps they're happy to do this with you. But for a lot longer, I think my kids would give me big side eyes if I would say, okay, we're going back to Germany now, with especially my daughter in middle school with her 4,000 friends. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to give that up, right? But at this moment, it's brilliant. You've got a business that you can take on the road. You can be flexible. You are actually not just taking it on the road, but you're sort of able to infuse the experiences from the road into your business, both from you're actually running international and then also the international culture, different people, different approaches. And from a marketing outreach, you're immediately able to hire on coaches international too, or is it just US centric for now?
No, we've got coaches international. I mean, I ran the Tarawera 100 in 2021 and did well, and I was on a podcast after that, which led to an Australian coach who reached out. Now Tom Scott coaches with us out of Newcastle, Australia, and does a great job. And we spent time in England, and most recently we just had another UK coach sign on. No, we've got coaches all around the world now, which is really cool.
Yeah. Oh,
and
this is,
runners.
yeah. Did we ever say the name of the business or the website? It's Team Run Run. And it's
Yes, Team Run Run.
perfect.
TeamRunRun.com. Yeah.
teamrunrun.com. Okay, we'll have the links to all of that stuff in the show notes for people who are interested, and we can do a big shout out at the end as well. No, this is terrific. This is it's an interesting microcosm. I think that they're, well, it is sort of like turn your passion into a business, being able to take something that you love doing and turning it into a full-time job, and being able to have your wife be part of the business makes it extra efficient as well, right?
Yeah. And now, to be fair, we didn't sit down 10 years ago and write out a business plan and like project that this is what we were going to do and this is where it was going to go. It's one of these things that just keeps evolving, and like we just keep rolling with it. It's like it's a good thing that we've got a good thing going. We've got really good people on our team, and it's really cool that we've gotten to just sort of like mesh it all together, and our life gets to be really focused around running. And
yeah,
I mean, it still works some nights, right? But like it's one of these things where I'm sitting on the couch reviewing training logs at 9:30 at night and seeing what my runners did, and I'm like, well, this is way better than X, right? Like I love, even when it's work, it's still fun. I'm fortunate. I'm very thankful that this is what we get to do.
I think to be honest and to be fair about this is the right, and grateful is the right way to approach it, right? I mean, some people thrive on being able to clock out at 5:00 and not have to worry about anything. And the idea that you just said, sitting on the couch at 9:30, that, makes them break out in hives, right? But you have the flexibility. You can optimize your training run around when the weather is nice. if you don't have any Zoom calls scheduled or whatever. But, you don't have a boss that breathes down your neck or requires you to be logged in during specific times of the day. But then on the other hand, you might have to wake up in the middle of the night because you're coaching someone and have a call and he's halfway around the world, right?
No, it's totally true, and it's fine, right? Like that's just the trade-offs in life, and I don't mind working after I get the kids to bed because I get to spend a lot of my day with my kids. I get to go run with my buddies when I want to. And then like I get to cheer people on about their, on their running journeys in the evening when I look at all their training and see what they did for the day. So it's all it's like a matter of perspective, right? Like some people might think, as you said, like, oh my gosh, I got to work at 10:00 at night. That's terrible. But I'm like, no, it's not a bad thing. I had a good day. So and I get to finish it by looking at what runners did for the day and give them some feedback on it, which is great.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more, like, what data do you look at? I've never even thought of looking at anything other than like, how many miles I ran and how fast I was. Like when you are remotely looking at people's at people you coach's data, what data do you look into? And it is probably a total noob amateur question to ask, but what information you get, because you didn't run with that person, you didn't have the stopwatch at the track, so you don't know how they did.
No, it's a good question, and the answer is not any sort of like rocket science, right? It's at least, I mean, some people get really into the data. I'm sort of like a middle of the road sort of data person when it comes to coaching. A lot of it is dependent upon the workout, right? Some days, if it's just an easy run, there's not much I'm going to look at, especially after I've coached someone for a while and I know that they get what I mean by an easy run or a recovery run and like the purpose of it. But, on a day where we're doing a specific workout that like every workout has an objective and why we do it. Like you're trying to work some physiological system or combination thereof. And so I can go look at the data. Say the workout was, I don't know, like 10 by 1 minute hard with a 2-minute rest, and then another 10 minute of like easy or moderate hard, like tempo running at the end. I'm going to go and look, and I say do it on a rolling course because you're going to do you're racing a hilly race. So you got to like practice working hard on ups and downs. I'm going to go look at their Strava probably. And I'm going to look at, I'm going to look at the gap to see like how they manage the different hills. I'm going to look at their pacing. If they have heart rate and they actually have a decent heart rate monitor, I'm going to look and see sort of how things went when they did the different parts of the workout. And then the more important thing though, after I look at that is I ask for subjective feedback. I want to know like, how did that workout feel? How do you feel about the workout? Did you do it well? Like what were the things that like, what was the limiting factor? You were tired, but like what was it cardio? Was it fatigue in your legs? What was it? Tell me about like, how did the workout feel? And I'm going to try and like make it sort of the narrative or the story out of that and say, okay, well, based on how you felt, based on looking at this data, maybe try and do this a little differently next time with this kind of workout. You might get a little more out of it. Or like some days it's just like, dude, you nailed that one. Like that is an awesome workout. You should feel good about this. Mm-hmm. And this is why we're doing it, because it's like building you towards this bigger goal that we have that we're working on. So yeah, it's looking at the data. It's looking at what they said about the run and then trying to make sense of it within the bigger picture of this is what we're doing now for this reason, working backwards from these big goals that they're working towards.
How long does it take you to crack people? If I hear you say they should subjectively say how their workout was, how long until they stop faking it? It sounds to me like how does it was a great workout, it was awesome. Was it really? Like how long does it take to build that that trust that people?
A lot of times it's just like asking good questions. I think a good coach will ask you good questions. I might just be like, you said this in your feedback. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean about that. I'm not busting on you. I just want to understand. And they start digging in and you're like, oh, I get where you're coming from. Like, like I can tend to see when someone is sort of like overreaching on, like they're working too hard at something or they're like, strides, like 20, 30-second surges are great. They're good for improving run economy and efficiency. And if you strain and you sprint, you're gritting your teeth, like you're actually being counterproductive. And I can tend to tell by the way people describe their workouts when they might be going a little too hard or like missing the objective of a workout. So I don't know. I've been doing it long enough. I feel like usually I can connect with people pretty quickly and just get them to tell me this, like, to just shoot straight with me, and they're going to get one of the things I tell people is like, look, the better information you give me, the more you tell me, the more you're going to get back. Mm-hmm. And if I have runners, they write in their log every single day and they hear from me every day. Like that's, like if they put in the work, I'm going to put in the work. Mm-hmm. And if they give me good info, they're going to get more out of me. So I don't know. I feel like it's pretty fast actually. Because people they've decided they're going to do this thing, and they're in, and they want to get a lot out of it, and so I try and make it clear this is how you get the most out of it. You do this, we're going to have a good time together. And they do it. I think.
What are the biggest challenges in terms of like what do you do when runners get injured or when races don't happen? Or meaning DNF, the runner DNFs, and you have to pick up the pieces afterwards. Or what was the last thing? Well, let's ask those first two, and then I think of the third one.
Well, I mean, the quick answer is it sucks when those things happen, right? Like I have a vested interest in them having a good experience. And so it sucks if someone gets injured. It sucks if someone DNFs, like not because like I'm like they're with them. Like I want them to succeed. Like I've watched them train for months, and it still happens sometimes, right? Like there are all sorts of reasons why people could DNF, and it might not be that they weren't fit enough, or maybe they like made some poor decision that they couldn't unravel in a 100-miler. Like they got to where they were vomiting, at mile 45, and it was hot, and there are all these things that could maybe had I talked them through it more ahead of time, maybe they wouldn't have. I guess the long story short is it sucks. It happens. I tend to try and focus on long term and the process. Like it's not like rarely does someone hire me to say, I'm doing this race in 4 months. This is all I care about. It's more like, okay, you're doing this thing in 4 months. And I bet as we get close to that race, you're going to already be thinking about the next thing. And like, I'm looking to build people up over years. So I would say like if someone after any race, whether they succeeded and nailed it or they had a bad race, it's like, all right, what can we learn? What could you do better? Like, let's write it all down. And then once we've like assessed it and learned, then we look ahead. And that happens whether you have a good race or you have a shitty race. Like it's just, you take what you can learn from it and then you go on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like my runners they would all like say to you like, oh yeah, his catchphrase is onward. I'm always saying onward, like figure out what you can figure out and then keep going. Like it's like an ultra strategy, right? Like I coach the way I run. Like you just got to keep moving. If you get too caught up in you don't want to avoid details, but like if you get overly emotional about anything or like upset or any of that kind of stuff, it's like, well, it's not helping you. Like just figure out what you can learn and keep going. Like that from my perspective in running, in life, in coaching, just keep putting in the work. You're going to get more out of it that way.
Do people come to you with an unrealistic goal that you have to say that's not going to happen?
I definitely have people come to me with goals that I think are like, yeah. Not the point that I'm going to say it can't happen, but if someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon, and then they tell me they've run a 3-hour marathon or a 250, and I'm like, well, you got to run a 218. There's a massive difference between a 640 pace and a 518 mile pace for a marathon. And we talk about it, but I don't say you're an idiot. That's a stupid goal. I'm going to say, like, let's see where the journey takes you. I don't know what's going to happen after 3 months of you doing, structured training with me. And sometimes people have these massive improvements, but, I don't want to just shoot down dreams. It's good to dream big, but at the same time, try and be realistic and like say, all right, well, this is where we're at right now. And so if you think you're going to hit this 218 in 3 months, that's not realistic. And I will tell them that.
Yeah. Well, I think
say 5 years from now, if they stick with it, who knows where they're going to go? Like you just put in the work and see where it can take you.
Well, I think one thing that's probably more the realistic scenario is, which is often one of the big games that I try to play in front of a big race, is you look at your pace that you're currently running at, and you look at the race that you're about to be racing that you've never raced before, and you try to come up with a finishing time that's realistic. And I find, especially early on my racing, I was off by like 20%. I always thought I was way faster than I would be. And you're laughing, right? But I mean, I think that's one of those common things that we sort of, I don't know, are we thinking too highly of ourselves, or we're not calculating that during the aid station, the clock actually keeps ticking, where in our training runs, we might pause our watches or something. So I feel like that's an interesting thing, because that has a huge different impact on how you approach a race, right? If you think you can finish something in 10 hours and it ends up being 14, then you didn't calculate for those last 4 hours, and it has mentally and physically a huge impact.
No, it's true. And I mean, I think that it's good to have an estimate of what you might be able to do in a course. And it's different on a trail mountain race than it is a flat road marathon too, right? Like,
sure.
There's so many variables that go into play in a 100-mile trail race that, like I might tell someone, look, I think you're probably in 22-hour shape on this course, plus or minus 2 hours. Yeah. Like if you have a normal day, 22 might be that's probably a reasonable range or target. But shit happens in ultras. And like if you get yourself mentally anchored to 22 and you start falling off that pace, that could have devastating psychological impacts on how the end of that race goes for you. So like you really want to be focused on just like performing your best and like managing each moment well. I mean, when I talk about 100 milers, it's so much about managing each moment well. Like if you're thinking about your finish time at mile 20, like you are not spending your energy and your attention well, in my opinion. Like you got to be dialed in on, all right, what do I need right now? How are things going? What do I need? Like keeping with your fueling and your hydration, and you're managing your efforts so that you're not breaking down your body too early, too hard. So yeah, like your focus, I don't think when you're in the race should be on the finish times and your pace too much. It's more about the things that you need to do to manage your body and your mental state well, so that you're actually in a position at mile 70 or 80 to be thinking about the finish time or your place or that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that was all very, very wise. You said lots of really, really great stuff. I can tell that I say that in almost every episode, especially with folks who I've not talked about. I think there are sort of two main ways of how people end up getting into trail running and ultra running. There are these people that come from a very, I call it perhaps focused approach. They might have experienced running in high school and college, and they've had a coach back then, and they sort of know how to train, how to kind of approach races, how to schedule the year out and stuff. They know what gear works for them or whatever, right? And then there are those people, and I put myself into this bucket where I've never really run. I've done sports, but I've not ever really run competitively. And so for me, I'm sort of I enjoy the mountains, I enjoy hiking, and now I'm doing it fast, and I enjoyed racing because I get to experience cool places. And so in many ways, I bumble around when it comes to these very focused working on goals. I can read a couple articles online to figure out somewhat of a training plan, how many miles I should be running each week in order to get to a goal to the race start, but that's sort of about it. So for me, hearing you talk sort of opens up a whole new world and a whole new way of looking at that sport of ours that I am very much approaching from a very casual way.
Well, yeah, and I have a lot of people that when we talk about me working with them, they're like, look, I'm not really competitive. I don't want to be trying to win the race. I just love being out there. And they're almost like afraid that working with a coach is going to make them like, if I work with a coach, I have to be like trying to get on the podium or something like that. And like, it's not at all. Like most of the people I work with they're just trying to be better at it and have a better experience and like get more out of their running. And I feel like, yeah, you can do things differently in training that make it so that your odds of suffering in your races go down. I mean, you're still going to go there, but like it's more on your terms. Like you know your body better, you've trained better, and when you're out there, I think Jason Koop said this. It's like it's not that you need to run a faster 100-miler, but if you do, you're out there less time, and there's less time for shit to go bad. Like the longer you're out there, the more likely shit's going to go bad.
Oh no, and absolutely, and being chased by cutoff is really not fun. So I mean, being a little faster is certainly more comfortable.
Yeah, but the other thing I've found is that people don't know like what other opportunities they may have as a runner, until they've improved. Like I have some people that they come to me and they're all about the trails and they love it, and I'm supportive of that. I mean, I love trail racing, and then they start getting faster and they're like, I think I could hit that Boston qualifying time. And they've never talked about road marathons before, but they've been looking, and they suddenly were like, I think I could hit that. And suddenly they care about running a fast marathon, which was never on their radar because they just never imagined they could run that fast. And then they get to go have that experience. It's like, cool, go run Boston, go run the Berlin Marathon. Those are great experiences. And then you're going to be sick of doing that kind of stuff after you've trained on the roads for 3 or 4 months. Then go back and do another mountain ultra, and you're going to be that much better for it because you just ran a good training block of fast road running. And that helps you be more efficient when you hit the trails again. And it's just really fun. As I mentioned, I have people I've worked with 5, 6, 7 years, and if you look at all their different paths of where they've gone with their racing, it's just so cool to see the experiences they've gotten to have in their lives because they've stayed discipline in a sense, or like they've just stayed on it. They've been consistent for years and just continued training and putting in work and kind of going where the path takes them. And it's really cool. I mean, as a coach, and I tell this to our coaches, like, this is just it's a great job. You get to like do this thing with these people and be there as they have these amazing experiences in a sense, even if it's online, like just, I have plenty of days where I'm on the weekends where I'm just watching the tracking on races and you're like, oh, come on, like you're doing great. Keep doing it.
Well, I mean, absolutely, right? I mean, if you are helping and supporting people doing something that they love. Like when I was 13, 14, I wanted to be a travel agent. It was, before online booking and everything. And I thought being a travel agent is great because you're helping people book their vacations, and vacations are a positive thing, and you're helping people put a smile on their face. And being a coach is somewhat the same thing, right? You're working with people who are dreaming, who are chasing goals, who are doing something positive, and being able to support people like that in that fashion is a fun business, is a fun time to spend.
And there's this added element that I think if you're sort of like a really good coach, you get to know the people really well too. Not just about like the good times, but like I've got one guy I've coached through. He was from the beginning of like midway through medical school, and he finished medical school. I've coached him all the way through his residency with these crazy hours, and like he did Nolan's last year, the whole thing. He finished like Nolan's in 52 hours. And he told me after, he goes, you know me better than I think anyone else right now, because for the last 5 years, you know my schedule, you know what I've been through, you know what I've put into my running and his medical, his doctor stuff. And like, that's a really cool thing to have someone say, you know me as well as anyone else, better than anyone else out there right now. Like, that's a cool thing to get to really know people by being part of their lives. And so, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I love it. Like, it's a really neat thing to have that sort of relationship. The relationship, that's what I said in the beginning. That's where the real value, that's where the magic happens. Just getting to know someone well about something that you both really love.
No, for sure. So how does one find a coach? There's a practical side, go to your website, but how do you figure out, how do you interview, how do you figure out that this is somebody that I want to, share a part of my life with, build a relationship with?
Yeah. We try, like on our website, we try and structure each coach's page in a way that like conveys who they are so that you can see if it's someone you might relate to. Like, if they have kids, they usually mention that like, I'm a mom and I've got 3 kids and I run ultras and I've been doing it for all these years. And, they put in their specialties, and we try and encourage coaches to sort of like say who their like niche or target audience is. We also have a review system where like you have to be a paying runner to leave a review. They're not testimonials. They're like, you could leave a bad review, right? Like, so you can learn a lot on our site about that. And then we encourage people to interview their coach. Like we have a form, you can reach out, and contact the coach, but, have a conversation, see if you connect. Like, I think that's, you want to make sure their credentials are good, and we try and filter that ahead of time, but you look at their credentials, and once that's good, you just want to make sure it's someone you're going to relate well to and you can have a good conversation with. So I think that's a good way to start, at least. Yeah.
All right. I think you answered all my questions. Is there anything that we haven't talked about?
I mean, you and I, as we've determined, can talk running for a long time.
I know, right?
No, I'm. What are you going to be racing? What's your big target? What do you want to do? You mentioned UTMB, but what are you after?
Well, I think with the changes of UTMB, I love racing in Europe. I mean, I think if I could have a continuous target of seeing once a year, even if it would be even once every 3 years, but I'm getting older. But if I could have a race once a year in Europe and rotate them through, that would be probably one of the ultimate dreams. I would love to race Lavaredo. I would love to race Eiger. I wouldn't have to just focus on UTMB. I did learn with Monte Rosa this year that Monte Rosa, it was a changed course because of COVID, and it was in a section of Switzerland where I didn't get that UTMB experience of 8 stations and full of people and people are out on the course. And so I don't know if there are any other races in Europe that truly have that sort of crazy experience, and that might be unique. And so I think at some point it has to be UTMB, but I would also be happy with looking at Mozart and Zugspitz Trail and all of these races over there and saying there's so many cool areas in the Alps and be able to discover, experience them through running. That would be absolutely fantastic.
That's awesome. No, we love racing over there, and trying to figure out the UTMB system and how they're changing it. I mean, that's I'm playing that game with I'm playing it myself, making sure I'm getting stones and working with my runners who their goal is to race in Chamonix and like how they can get it. And the cool thing is they have so many cool races in their series that it's like, well, you could go race Mozart and you're going to get stones and then you can put in for UTMB and
exactly.
Yeah. I can just say it's worth it. It's worth trying to like get in because I ran UTMB in 2016. I've run CCC in 2018. I was supposed to do TDS in 2020, but I'm going to go do it this summer. All that to say, like the vibe in Chamonix is unlike any other race I've been. I mean, Western States is awesome too. I'm not diminishing that one, but like UTMB is a very unique experience and one that's worth going for. It's like a road runner, like doing Boston. Like it's just a cool experience. Yeah. You should at least get it once. You can.
No, absolutely. I think so. A friend of mine raced UTMB at the same time I was over at Monte Rosa, and I don't think he's taken his bracelet off his arm since. I think he's still flying. I can tell you,
one of my favorite things at UTMB, I don't remember what, it was in the second half, later in the race, and I remember coming into an aid station, and they announced who's coming in, and like you would hear at the end of a race, they'll say your name, where you're from, and I'm in the aid station getting my stuff done, and I'm just noticing in the background they're playing Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. And I was like, you know what? They're playing that because I'm in here right now. They are awesome. Like that's just so cool. Like I'm the American here and they're playing Bruce Springsteen, like that. I don't know. I just love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And they have that down. And I think once the whole kerfuffle with the new system is sort of figured out, then it will be clear again how to get points and stones and stuff, right? It's just a changeover that makes it so confusing in the moment. Cool. Matt, absolutely. Tell quickly one more time our listeners where they can connect with you and anything else you want to share.
Sure. I feel like I've said all I want to say here, but if you're interested in a coach, we have a great team and a cool sort of community that we've built, and it's our business. I would love to have more people join in. TeamRunRun.com. You can search our coaches there. We have over 90 coaches that you can look at there. If you have anything for me, I'm simple. You can just email matt@teamrunrun.com, and I'm not really much on social. You can follow Team Run on Instagram and stuff. My wife does that stuff, not me. She's good with that. I'm not.
You are going to start that travel influencer program, though, right? I mean,
yeah. It's a great. I can fit that in between training for 100 milers, homeschooling my 2 kids, and running a business. I got that's next on the list. I love it.